pastor guy. He is, a couple months ago, him and I started talking. Jeff and I have known each other since I think you were 16?
18.
18?
Yeah.
And you led worship for me one summer when we were just kind of starting out. You and Charity led worship. And so we've had some history together.
Yes.
And I've got to watch Jeff move closer towards Christ and really kick that in and say, I want to be a man. There's that point where you're a kid. And then you transition, and at some point you have that place to say, I am going to be a man of God. I am going to be a man who follows after God. And I've got to watch that in Jeff's life. And so we talked several months ago, and as the door's been going on, Jeff and I have been building great relationship, and he's a guy I love and trust. And as we were talking a couple months ago, and I said, I'm going to do a series on relationships. He said, Paul, when you get to that place, I want to speak. Because that's the one place that God has spoken to me about being a man of God for a relationship. And so tonight I want you guys to just give it up for Jeff Pollard.
Thanks. First thing I'm going to do is have a refreshing drink. I read the message board today, and I see a lot of you are nervous. That's the announcement guy. Why is he talking? Well, Paul kind of ruined my intro by telling me I'm talking about relationships, because I was going to really do a talk on announcements and how we can give announcements to the fullest, to the fullest glory of God, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm Jeff Pollard, and I do quality control service stuff for the door and do sports ministry. And other than that, I have a 9-to-5 job. I'm a business manager of a Jeep dealership in Montrose with my dad. And I haven't done much evangelizing or teaching, but if you want 0% down for 36 months on a 2005 Grand Cherokee, you come talk to me, see what we can do. As we go through this month, we're going to kind of be going through the stages of relationships, not that we've set them up really. This is the stages that I've put down on paper. But stage 1, romance. 2, power struggle. 3, cooperation. 4, mutuality. And 5, co-creativity. And Paul kind of touched on 1 through 3 last week. But I kind of want to spend a little time in 1, and actually before we actually get to 1, the stage of romance, before we're actually even into a relationship. Last week I was having dinner with my parents and Jessie, who's my girlfriend, at Chili's, which is a great place. And we were just kind of talking about growing up, being a kid. And I grew up out in the country, we weren't really Hicks because I really didn't do any chores or anything, but whatever. It was a farm. And when I was a kid, I spent probably the age from my time I was 5 till about 13 on a trampoline with a football, some football pads, and a whole made-up league of 38 teams with full rosters, mascots, helmets, everything. And that consumed about 10 years of my life. But basically what I'm saying is I was a pretty creative kid, pretty good imagination, and I just could really find ways to entertain myself. When you're a kid, that's great. As you start to grow up, like if you saw a guy like me, 28 years old, out on a trampoline with football pads and a football, throwing a football to himself, you should probably call somebody because he's probably run away or he's supposed to be somewhere that he's not anymore, so you should get on that. But as you get older, your imagination is still there, so it tends to take over for me sometimes as I was growing up, and just there's certain times when you don't want that to happen, like when you're driving a car, you're in school, and bald guy's talking about Shakespeare, and what's that guy's name? Grigsby, yeah, high school. I went to high school with Karen, and I really didn't want to hear him, so I'd think about whatever, how I'm a varsity football player and I'm only a junior, and someday I'm going to play at CU, and I'm going to whatever. I wasn't thinking about English. And about the time I was 17, between my junior and senior year, I had a buddy named Alan he was just a really good motocross rider, and so I used to go to his house every day, and I just thought after a while we got to be really close, and I said, well, I want a motorcycle. So I talked my dad into going to Denver with me, we got a motorcycle, came back, and I just spent that whole summer hanging out with Alan riding motorcycles. And he had this really long stretch of road by the side of his house. And so one day we just took off going down that road. And, I start on target, focused, watch out for the bump, be careful, shift, clutch, brake, shift. And as I get going down this road, I start thinking like, wow, that bush is so green. And, oh, a bunny. And it smells really good today. And as I keep going that, I just get further and further away from concentrating on riding and more onto my surroundings. And if you know anything about a motorcycle, which most of you probably do because you're alive, you have a clutch on this side and a brake on this side. And the worst thing possible that you could do is be going like 25 and, clutch, brake, well, then brake. And that's exactly what I did. And so at that moment, I'm like this. And I didn't wear a helmet because I'm an idiot. And I just saw the ground in my face. And, I hadn't wrecked yet. It was my first wreck. I'm a pretty cautious kid. And then I just ate it. And so I'm laying on the ground going, man, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And then I turn around, and then there's my motorcycle. It falls down. I put my arm up, and, of course, the exhaust pipe comes out about 6 inches out of the back of the motorcycle, lands right on my arm. Then it burns my arm. So now I hate my motorcycle. I want to burn the bush. If I could find that bunny, I'd punch him in the face. And the point to all that being is I had hit a wall. And I feel like that with God a lot of times. Like I'm going along and it's God, Jeff, God, Jeff, God, Jeff. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's Jeff. And Jeff takes over and everything I want becomes the focus of what I'm doing in my life. And I'm going to talk about Job. And I'm going to paraphrase the story of Job because it's like 42 chapters long and it'd take a long time to read all that. Job was a really cool guy. Feared God, 7 sons, 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, 500 female donkeys, probably a couple male donkeys just to make more female donkeys. A lot of servants, some shepherds, some guys who watch camels, whatever you call those guys, camel watchers. And he was like the richest guy in all of the land of Uz. God was talking to Satan about Job, saying, look how cool Job is. He loves me. He's amazing. He fears me. And Satan goes, yeah, but you've taken care of him his whole life. All you do is you've given him these riches and this wonderful family and all these things. He says, let me test him. So God goes, okay, you can test him, but don't hurt him physically. So they made a deal. And so Job was hanging out one day, and all of a sudden this guy ran in and said, Job, Sabian raiders raided us. They took all your animals and killed all your farmers. And Job was like, wow, that's a lot of animals and a lot of farmers. And while that guy was talking, another guy came in and said, Job, the fire of God came down from heaven, and it totally barbecued all the sheep, killed all the shepherds. And Job's like, wow, this is turning out to be not a very good day. And while those two guys were still talking, a third guy came in and said, Job, your kids were all having dinner. A huge wind came up, knocked the house over, the wall fell down, crushed all your kids. They're all dead. And it says Job got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head, which I imagine that I would probably do worse than that. But anyway, I want to read to you Job's response. And I'm going to be in Job 3, 20 through 26. Job says, oh, why should the light be given to the weary and life to those in misery? They long for death and it won't come. They search for death more eagerly than hidden treasures. It is a blessed relief when they finally die, when they find the grave. Why is life given to those with no future, who is destined by God to live in distress? I cannot eat for sighing. My groans pour out like water. What I always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come to be. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Instead, only troubles come. So my first point is this. We all hit the wall at some point. And I would definitely say at that point, Job had probably hit the wall. Everything he had come crashing down around him. The cool thing about Job is he didn't blame God, whereas like me, I hit the wall because of my own actions a lot of the time. And I don't know that I've ever blamed God, but I've always felt like, oh, that's so unfair. I started in relationships at a pretty young age. I would not say I'm a ladies' man by any means because that's so not even the case. But I do remember when I was in kindergarten, I used to go to Woodgate Christian School in Montrose, Colorado. It was an awesome school. But anyway, we went on a field trip one day, and we were going to Buckley Park, which is on Nevada and South 3rd, if you ever want to go check it out. And on the way there, I was in the back seat of my teacher's car, Mrs. McKishin. And I think she's still teaching, but she was a good teacher. And I was in the back of the car with Amanda Morrow. And I'd been in a hot pursuit of Amanda Morrow for some time. I don't really know how long. Probably a few weeks. But anyway, there's also this other kid, and I hung out with this kid at his house once, and I just didn't like this kid, Martin Martinez. And come to find out, he really likes Amanda too. So then I really didn't like him. And I was like, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. why don't you find somebody else? But he wasn't having any of it. But he was in the front seat that day, and on the way there, Amanda and myself kissed, which was awesome because we were like 5, and my parents were probably not happy about that. And Mrs. McKishin didn't see it, and I don't ever remember getting in trouble. And I usually remember when I got in trouble. But that was the first time I can remember actually, like, I wouldn't really be called a relationship, but my first experience with the girl. And once we got to the park, things just got better because we played E.T. that day. And I was Elliot, and Martin was E.T., who E.T. is totally deformed, so who wants to be E.T.? And I know Elliot doesn't have a girlfriend in the movie, but Amanda was my girlfriend that day, so that was a good time. And it just kind of went from there. I went through most of my, I really didn't have a girlfriend seriously till I was probably in 9th or 10th grade, and I kind of went through the normal stages of dating all the way through high school. Had a pretty serious girlfriend for my whole junior year of high school, and kind of broke up with her and just kind of went through my senior year with not much excitement. But once I left school, I went on a DTS with YWAM. I don't know if any of you are familiar with YWAM, but once I came back, I started dating a girl who was still in high school, and that was a pretty serious relationship. We got close really quickly, and she was not saved when we met, and in about 5 months into the relationship, she got saved. But the one thing I remember most about that relationship is how much she depended on me. And I never really thought about that till later, but she didn't have God in her life at all, and everything that revolved around our relationship was revolved around how I treated her, and her whole spectrum of emotions and logic would go up and down based on whether Jeff was okay with me that day or not okay with me that day. And as I look back, I really didn't notice that because I was only a 20, 21-year-old kid, and I just wasn't paying attention to what God was asking me to pay attention to. I was just paying attention to I really liked this relationship. And it was actually a pretty good relationship. We were really well behaved. We didn't get in a lot of trouble, and things went pretty slowly actually through that relationship. She finally went to college when she was finally, like she's dumb or something. She ended up going to college at CSU, and I'd go visit her, and things were good. And I remember one weekend I went, nothing special about the weekend, just went to hang out with her. And I remember the day I left, she got off her bed and kind of got down on one knee, and I was like, dude, are you sick, or can I get you some water, or what's going on? And she asked me to marry her. And this was the point in my life in relationships where I had hit my wall. Because all of a sudden, all these things came crashing into me, and I was like, I don't even know what to say. I said, oh, okay, because I really had no idea what to say. But I do remember at that time going, I am so not ready to be even in a relationship right now because I have no idea what I'm doing. What I'm doing is just having a good time, and I'm pretty sure that that's not what it's about. I gave myself a little bit of credit because I was only 21. I was almost 22 within a couple weeks of that happening. But to me, that wasn't an excuse. My age wasn't the problem. The problem was that all I cared about was myself, and that all I'd done that whole relationship with that girl was take for myself. And that kind of hit me at that time. The worst thing about this whole story is that was like the 4th or 5th of February, and our anniversary, whatever you want to call that, was on the 13th. Valentine's Day was the 14th. Her birthday was the 15th, and I broke up with her on the 16th, which was radical. She was really... But I just realized at that point, I'm not what I want to be as a man, and I'm pretty sure I'm not what God wants me to be as a man. And I felt like I was in some serious bondage to a couple things, and I actually didn't realize what it was till later on. What I thought it was actually wasn't what it was, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But I knew there were some things that were going to be very destructive in my future if I didn't take care of them at this time. And so we did break up, and we were pretty good friends for a bit, but then it really fell off, and I don't know really how she's doing. She actually lives close, and I know she's kind of fallen away from God, and I know that that's not really my fault, but that always hurts when you think about that, because when you're in that relationship, it's kind of tough when you see that as an after effect of being in that relationship. So I want to get to my second point, and that is we're all bound to the choices we make, and I'm going to read Romans 6:16. If I can, my fingers are so small and fat, it's ridiculous. But I got it done. There we go. All right, it says, don't you realize that whatever you choose to obey becomes your master? You can choose sin, which leads to death, or you can choose to obey God and receive His approval. The kind of bondage I want to talk about in relationships especially isn't so much the kind of bondage that a lot of us aren't responsible for, such as our parents getting divorced, abuse, abandonment. A lot of those things we can't control. I want to talk about the decisions I made personally, because the bondage I found myself in was just a choice that I made. If you looked at me from the outside, as I tell you this, you're going to think, wow, this is a pretty good kid. And you know what? I was a pretty good kid, and I'm still a pretty good kid. Just getting old. I have awesome parents. I have a mom and dad who love me very much. They love each other very much. I've never once in my life seen my dad raise his voice at my mom or my mom disrespect my dad. And they treated us the same way. I have a brother and a sister who are twins and brother-in-law, which is nice. And he doesn't know a lot of this yet because he's only been around for a while. But they're great parents. And they were a great example to us as a married couple and just as parents, how they treated us, just their kindness and how they always took care of us and just led us in the right paths. And God was always with my parents, and I could always see it and I could always feel it. The thing is, when it comes to a point in your life when your parents aren't the ones who make your choices anymore, and it's up to you. So it was up to me to look at especially my dad as a man, and say, I really want to be like that. But it was still up to me to make the choices that were going to take me down that path. And after I hit this wall, I started asking a lot of questions. I started out by why wasn't I ready for a relationship, and that was pretty obvious pretty quick that I didn't even know what a relationship was, especially a godly one, and I hadn't been in one with a godly girl. So that was the first question that came to mind. I thought maybe it's just because I'm 22, but that isn't really true either. That would just be kind of an excuse to not deal with what I saw was my problem. I came to the conclusion that something had a hold of me, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was because I hadn't really thought about it because I was thinking about me, and that's going to be kind of a theme as we go through this, is that I tended to think about me all the time. And I know that probably a lot of us have been in that position before. We tend to think of things like fairness as that's not fair, and it's not fair because it doesn't benefit you. But a lot of the thing that has to do with fairness is you're thinking about yourself when you're thinking about being treated unfairly. And that was kind of in the position I was at. I know I was young at 22, but at the time I thought, I'm not really that young. I'd kind of like to find this girl and what's going on. And I knew the only way that was going to change is if I just got on my knees and said, God, take all of me. But at the time, I wasn't really willing to do that. I wanted to be the man God wanted me to be. But mostly at that time, I just wanted to be that so he'd bring me the right person. And at that time, I really hadn't chosen to make him my own. It was more of what's his benefit going to be to me. And I want to talk to you kind of about this kind of bondage and what I think of it as I prayed about it and as I've thought about it a lot over my life. I kind of see myself standing on a cliff just with a little ledge and a huge rock face behind me. And then there's just a walkway, like a bridge, that leads across to just basically open. It just goes forever and ever and ever and ever. And I'm on this ledge, and I have this backpack, and it's full of everything in my life, everything that is all me, and everything that consumes me, all my selfishness, and all that makes Jeff what he is outside of God. And I see God constantly coming across this bridge, and I feel like I'm shackled up to the wall. And I always feel like he undoes the shackles and says, leave your baggage and come with me. And so I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. But I pick up my bag and I get to the bridge and he's like, no, leave your bag and come with me. And I always have made the choice, you know what, I'll just stay here. And I put my hands back up and lock myself to that wall. But the thing is, he comes back all the time. And he really isn't ever gone. He's just right there. And I always feel like, I've done that for so long in my life. Like I have all this stuff that I don't want to leave behind because it makes me feel good. It's fun. It's a good time. It makes me cool. It's all these things that he's saying, if you just leave that and come with me, I can get rid of all that stuff. But instead of doing that, I just lock myself back up to that wall. As I was around through this time, and I'm going to give you a time frame of about 18 through 23 because it wasn't an exact time. But I finally just, had it out with God around the age of about 22 after this girl and said, I don't know what you want from me. But I'm going to be willing to come to you and talk to you about stuff. And as I look back in my life, I've been an idiot in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I was definitely in bondage to at that time was and I don't know if I would say seriously addicted because I don't really know what that is, but pornography was a huge part of my life. And I don't know that I spent a lot of money on it or really a lot of time, and it wasn't like if I had something else to do that I wouldn't do it because that was more important. But I did know that being single and just, I had these needs, I thought, and I needed to fulfill it, and that's how I did it. And it wasn't really overnight, and I don't really know when it would really start, but I know like the internet had a lot to do with it. The internet, you have everything at your fingertips, And I just did. I spent a lot of time online and doing a lot of things I shouldn't have done. And I don't come at the problem of pornography the way that a lot of people do. For me, it wasn't necessarily about lust because we all know it's lustful. That's not the point that I'm trying to get to. What really started to hit me was that it's so absolutely selfish. I felt like I'm involved in this thing with this person that isn't really even alive to me, so I really don't have a relationship with anybody that's there. But all I do is take and take and take from this person or these people or whatever it is, and just to fill me up. It's all selfishness. And it wasn't so much that I was thinking about lust or that I felt guilty, as much as I felt like, these people are so lost. And instead of thinking about that, all I'm doing is taking to fulfill my desires. And obviously I don't know any of these women or whatever, but that wasn't the point. It just became very evident fairly soon that if I continued to take this path, once I actually did get into a relationship, and like Paul said last week, the person you are now in a lot of ways is going to be the person you are when you get married or when you get into a relationship. And I started thinking, if I continue down this path, when I finally do meet that woman that God wants me to meet, if I'm in this state of mind, I'm going to take and use her for all my own desires, wants, and needs. And never am I going to be able to give myself to her, to lay myself down and just love her. And, it's a tough call. As men, we're called to love our wives like Christ loved the church. I don't think we really think about that sometimes, but that's an absolutely overwhelming command. I mean, and it means laying down your life 100%, being absolutely 100% selfless in front of the person that you're married to, in front of this person that you're in a relationship with. And I knew that if I continued down this path, I could never ever do that because I wasn't doing it. I was taking for myself. Let me see here. I didn't want to be a man who took for himself. I wanted to be a man who gave to people. And so what came next for me was, well, how do I do this? How do I get out of this bondage? And I kind of came, as I've been thinking about this, I hadn't really come to this conclusion at this time, but as I thought about this last couple months, and as I've thought about how I moved on from one step to the other, the two things that came to mind to me were, one, I was going to have to come in absolute humility before God and just pretty much tear myself open and say, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want this to be about me. I don't want it to be about what satisfies me or fulfills me. I want it to be about you, the man you've called me to be, and the man you're wanting me to be. Personally, I think, I think you're called to be single, and I think you're called to be married. And I'm more excited about having kids than anything else in the world. So I'm pretty sure that I was called to be married at some point. I don't really think I was like Paul. The cool thing about Paul is Paul's family was everyone he came in contact with. So Paul didn't have a wife. He didn't have these things that he split half of his time with his family, and then his other half of his time with everyone that he was preaching to. Paul's family was everyone. Well, I don't know that that's the case for everybody. The cool thing about that is Paul didn't have to worry about did you get your lunch money or why'd you punch that kid in the face? And Paul got to think about all those he was preaching to, and that was his family. But for me, I've always felt like God just wanted me to be married and have kids, and I still do to this day. So, good for that. And the second thing I really started thinking about, and I'll get to this in a little bit, was that I wanted to strive to find wisdom in my life, to get past. I think we talk about guys and girls a lot. Girls, really emotional. Guys like to be really logical, and I don't think that either of those is the right way if it's all one or the other. But I do think wisdom, which is entirely different from both of those things, is something that we should absolutely strive for, whether it be in relationships, how we live our lives, how we do at work. Wisdom and understanding are two of the most important things we can ever have in our lives. And the Bible's full of that. I mean, you look through Proverbs, it's all about being wise. It's a whole book. So my third point is this. For Focus on God, not the problem. I knew I had a problem, and that wasn't the issue. Just by focusing on the problem with myself and being selfish wasn't going to make me less selfish, because there is no solution just knowing you have the problem. What is the solution is God. And you know what? Just like I said, like on that ledge all the time, He's always there, wanting us to leave that baggage and come across that bridge with Him. And I don't know about you guys, but I just so many times say, no, it's too hard and it's not what I want. And I felt like, as I was doing all that, the internet's like an annoying roommate. It's like you come home and it's there. It's just like, hey, dude. You're like, I got stuff to do. And it's like, oh, come hang out with me for a while. But the other cool thing is at the same time, God is right there in that room with you. And the only way I was going to see restoration, healing, was going to be through letting myself realize God's will in my life, His love, and His timing. And that was going to make me the man that He desired me to be, was to start making Him the center of everything I do, the center of my life. And I finally just gave up and said, God, do what you want me. If you want me to be married, awesome. If you want me to stay single, sweet. I just want to do what you want. So I did what everyone would do. I totally ignored Him and graduated from college and went to England for a year, which had nothing to do with anything that I had just learned, but it's what I did. And honestly, I kind of went for a couple different reasons, but one of them was a girl, and she had sort of sandy blonde hair, and just kidding, Napoleon Dynamite. Have any of you seen that movie? She's a real pretty face, but I'm really T.O.'d. But anyway, and when I got there, the coolest thing about this girl was her family, actually, because I'm actually best friends almost with two of her brothers. I was just in one of their weddings this last year, and I was so excited just to go hang out with them. And I remember talking to my dad, and he was really good, because I kind of knew that he didn't really know why I was going. And he kind of said, why are you going? And I said, I don't know. It's what God's telling me to do, which wasn't true at all. And my mom was really great. She really never asked me why I was going, but I'm pretty sure that she wasn't real sure why I was going either. And I ended up getting there and hanging out with this girl, and I had a fun time, but I was so empty. And I was, again, with YWAM, which I don't know if any of you have been to YWAM, but it's straight up spirit-filled most of the time. And I just felt as dead as I've ever felt, because I knew, one, that I had not stayed home and dealt with some stuff that God was asking me to deal with. I'd gone and once again, pursued what I wanted to do, and just gone and done my own thing. And it was about the hardest. I didn't even make it a year. I was supposed to be there a year, and I didn't. I came home at Christmas, and I went back and was there a couple more months and said, I'm coming home, because I wasn't supposed to be there. And I was there for 9/11, which was the hardest thing in the world for me, because I'm like straight up redneck conservative across the board. And it was tough to be out of states during that time. I mean, it was just a tough time. And there was a lot of anti-American stuff and just all kinds of stuff going on, and I just hated it. And I remember calling my mom, I don't know how many times, and just saying, Mom, all we do is have meetings about how dumb Americans are and how, oh, God, help Americans not be so stupid. And, it's the English. And you're like, what are you talking about? You used to own 75% of the world, and now you live on your little island. But anyway, really wasn't the point. So again, I came home, and I said, if you're really asking me to be single, that's what I'll do. And I said it again. And I actually remember this vividly, because I kind of wrote it down one night. And I remember just, it's funny how I kind of talk with God. A lot of people feel like they're talking to the Holy Spirit, whatever. I really feel like I have conversations with God. And I don't really say much. I usually let Him talk, because it's pretty amazing. But this was probably up to this point the most amazing thing that's ever happened. And He said, I'm not asking you to be single. I'm asking you to be patient and wait on me, to come be with me, to come talk to me, to come listen to me, surround yourself with me. That's what I'm asking you to do. It wasn't necessarily about being single or being in a relationship. It was about coming and actually being in a relationship with Him, because that's what He's called us all to do, is to come be with Him and to bring ourselves in front of others and say, come, see this amazing God, see this Christ, and see what He's done for us. And He was asking me to do that. And this whole time, I again was so focused on myself that I was like, no, you come be with me, because I got stuff I need to deal with, and you're the only one that's going to be able to help me here. And over the next couple years, not even a couple years, it was about a year, I just really started to deal with that. What does that mean? And since this girl in college, which was when I was 22, I hadn't really dated anyone. And about this time, I think I'm 26 about at this time. Whatever, 26-ish. So it's been that long, and I really haven't been in too many relationships. I see Lacey here. I was roommates with Lacey's now husband, and with her for a long time, and she'll tell you I didn't really hang out with a lot of girls. I mean, I hung out with Lacey a lot. Well, that's cool. But I really didn't seek it out either. It wasn't something that I was focused on. And the reason I wasn't really that focused on it, because, again, I was so wanting to be done with me and start to see what he really wanted in my life. And again, I still felt like I was called to be married and called to be in a relationship, but I just hadn't felt like I was ready. At about this time, I met a girl named Jessie, who's right there. So obviously things are looking up because she's here right now. And that's been a little over a year ago. And at this point, we've known each other for a little over a year. We've been dating or whatever you want to call it, on and off for that whole time. But we've been together, not together. A couple things have gone on. And I like to say dating. You can call it whatever you want except for courting. Does anybody have Joshua Harris books? Because, yeah, I don't like those books because he's like, you come sit over there with her and her parents, and you sit on this side of the room, and we'll talk across the room, and that's how you date. I'm like, dude, you're whatever. Whatever works for you. So I hate the word courting because of those books, and I read them both, so I do know what they're about. But we've been on and off kind of that whole time, and actually I'd say we've been together, since maybe midsummer, June-ish, July. I don't know why I said June-ish. I don't even think that's word. But anyway. And you know what? I can honestly say, like, just maturity-wise and age-wise, I'm ready to be married. What does that really mean to me? Well, not much. It means I'm pretty old, and, like, I want to, be able to out-sprint my kid till he's about 18, and I'm 28, so I need to get on that, because if I wait too much longer, by the time he's about 9, he's going to be able to take me, and then when he comes home to eat, I'll just sit on him. But the point isn't really that I'm ready or that I'm old enough or that I'm mature enough or financially stable. What mattered is am I ready when God's going to ask me to be ready? And the funny thing is, once you get in a relationship, is you realize that all of a sudden now, it's not are you ready by yourself to be ready when God asks you to be. All of a sudden there's this person here now who all that stuff I just went through in my life, this person has a whole bunch of stuff that she's gone through in her life. And you know what? You both have to come together at the same time. Well, there's going to be some hardships and some hard times. And especially if you don't have God as the center of that, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to be dealing with these things for the rest of your life. Or, till that relationship reaches its end and then it's done. So I came as humbly as I knew how at the time and said, you know what? I don't want to do this on feelings. I don't want to do this on what I want. I just want to come and be in this relationship different from any relationship I've ever been in. And that's one where I just come before you and I just wait on you and see what happens. And, a month into this relationship, I was like, I'm ready. This is what I want. I know it's for sure. I know it's what I want. And, you know what? It's not at all what he was telling her. And that's really, really tough. Because, I wanted to be mad. And we broke up one time and pretty early into it. And I was like, man, this is hard. I thought I knew what you were saying. And he kept saying, you do know what I'm saying. And I'm just asking you to be patient and to wait on me. And again, he's asking me to do that because I'm not the only one that he's talking to here. And again, I started thinking, well, that's just about me. He's talking to her too, and he's doing a lot of things in her. At the same time, he's doing a lot of things in me. And he's asking me to be patient on him and wait. And I remember finally just having it out one night. I was actually in the shower, which is totally weird because I was just like, this shampoo is foamy. And I remember just sitting down and crying and crying and crying. And I was crying because my whole relationship with God up to that point, especially in relationships, has been, you rub my back, I'll rub yours, God. You do some things for me, I'll start doing the things that you want me to do. And, I tend to find myself in times of desperation, and I know a lot of us can identify with this, but that's when we all turn to God. We're like, God, things are just horrible right now, and we really just come and we lay our lives, and we're like, oh, things are so horrible. But when they're good, it's a lot easier just to, keep down our own path and not necessarily pay attention to what God's trying to tell us. Well, I was certainly broken at this time. And what ended up happening is I fell on my knees, which I've also never done. And just said, you know what, I want more than anything, God, is what you want for Jesse. You know, I still do this a lot, so it's kind of tough. I just want to see her fall more and more in love with you all the time. And she's had some stuff happen in her life as far as with her, you know, how she grew up and her parental situation and some stuff that I've never had to deal with. But yet again, here I was, a lot of times just trying to make this my own thing. And I'm no way advocating that if you're in like a real abusive relationship or a relationship where, you know, that isn't healthy, that's not what I'm talking about. Because that's not at all what this relationship was. What it was is seeing someone really try to find their place with God and God asking you to be there with Him and just support her. And I really didn't know how to do that. I mean, sometimes still don't. But I do know it means just getting rid of myself all the time and putting her first in my life. And that's what He's always called us to do, and that's what He'll always call us to be, not only to whoever we end up with in a relationship, but just to everyone we meet. And it's tough to talk about because I just don't do that, you know. Just coming home today, like this lady was driving so slow. I was like, seriously, like you have kids and like food and like get there, come on. And I just end up, you know, I don't do that. I again think about myself all the time. And the toughest thing sometimes is it happens every day. But you know what? He's there every day. And He's the only thing I can go to every day and say, you know what? Forgive me, God. I've done this again. I'm thinking about myself this whole day. I've just, you know, there's days when I don't even talk to God sometimes, you know. And that's just the honest truth. Because I'm so wrapped up in what I'm doing or how I'm feeling. And what we both have kind of realized through this whole thing is God's absolutely trustworthy. He's absolutely faithful, and He's taking care of us this whole time. Because there's been a couple times it has been done, and a few more times that I'm sure we thought it was going to be done. And what we both kind of realized was we don't always have it together. We definitely aren't always in control. Emotions can be very deceiving sometimes, especially if your emotional state is focused completely on yourself and not the other person in the relationship or what God's trying to do. And we tend to think that our plan is always so much better than God's plan. Because we're like, man, I have a good plan here, God. Just, come on. And what we realize is that that's not true. And so as we've gone through this, I'm not a big fan of what I thought pain was, but as I've gone through this, I've seen it's a lot less painful, and it's a lot more comforting just to know that He's here with me this whole time and still asking me to wait, and still asking me to be patient. I mean, we're not engaged yet, and we're certainly not married, but He's still growing every single day. And we grow together every single day because we grow in Him. And that I want to get to my fourth point because I'm kind of behind, which I didn't think I'd be. And it's don't just search for love in a relationship, search for wisdom. We all say, oh, I want to find this person I can fall madly in love with. Well, that's not the only part of the equation. You know, we need to search for wisdom. And I want to read you a couple scripture verses here real quick. The first one is Psalms 111, verse 10. That's Proverbs. It's a problem. There we go. Reverence for the Lord is the foundation of true wisdom. The rewards of wisdom come to all who obey Him. Praise His name forever. And then in Proverbs 2, verse 3 says, 3 through 5, cry out for insight and understanding. Search for them as you would lost money or hidden treasure. Then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you will gain the knowledge of God. And so as I read these verses and I was praying about this, I started thinking, well, where do you find all this wisdom? I mean, it's easy to ask for wisdom, but where do you find it? So I want to go to Job 28, verse 12, and then I'm going to skip down to verse 28. But do people know where to find wisdom? Where can they find understanding? 28. And it is this that he says to all humanity, the fear of the Lord is true wisdom. To forsake evil is real understanding. And basically what I think that means in a nutshell is that it's not necessarily about doing, saying wise words or doing wise deeds. It's concerned with being, not doing. It's being the person that God's asked us to be. And in relationships, it's not always about the words you say. Like I said, I'm not a ladies' man. I'm not Solomon. Solomon was obviously pretty successful with the ladies because he had like 1,000 of them. And at the same time, he was a very wise man. And I mean, you read Song of Solomon, he's like, oh, my doe, bounding and hopping through the field and eating the grass, I just want to tackle you in delight. And if it were me, I'd be like, oh, my doe, look at you in the field eating all day with your big hooves. I mean, it just would come out wrong and you get smacked in the face. So it isn't about the words that when I look at Solomon, he's awesome because he's both. But what I really started thinking about is I just want to be wise. I want to know the wisdom of the Lord, and how will I know that? I think what it is this. I believe wisdom comes through selfless attitude that strives to seek God as the center of the relationship. Wisdom and preparation do not come from the dizzying emotions, or actually to the opposite of that, the absolute logic. We always have to have some analysis for why things are happening. I do, especially. I love logic. I love things to be in order. But it's not about the emotions and the analysis of a relationship. It's about God being the center of your relationship. Henry Blackaby writes in his book, Experiencing God, find out where God is working and join Him there. And as people, we always tend to say, God, this is the person I want to marry. Please come bless me. And that's not what He's called us to do. He has called us to come be where He is at. One puts God in the center, the other puts ourselves in the center. When we make choices to be independent of God and then ask for His blessing, we are asking God to approve an idea that originated within us. It didn't necessarily originate within Him. And even though God gave us the ability to reason and make choices, He said this about our thoughts, and I want to go, this will be my last one too, Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. I thought these little pieces of paper would be a good idea. They're not. My thoughts are completely different from yours, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you can imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And what I want to say in closing, the band can come up whenever they so choose. God's knowledge and wisdom are so far greater than ours in everything we do, including relationships. And I think a lot of times that's the one place that we tend to absolutely take over, because we have these feelings and we're so in love and we're just so focused on what's happening to us. And why we tend to, especially in relationships, for me, I just see what's right in front of me at the time. It's like if you're looking at a picture, I see what's in the valley. And what I think God sees is He can see the entire landscape of what's happening around us. And what's so amazing about that is if you do wait and you are patient, He'll show you that entire landscape, not just where you're at the moment. Because He has so much bigger plans for all of us than what we seem to think He has sometimes. And I want to strive for that in my life. I want to strive to make God choices in my relationships, not necessarily good choices. Because what I always think is a good choice doesn't always mean that it's the choice that God's made for me. And that, those are the choices that I want to focus on, not necessarily what I think is a good choice in my life. The hard fact is that we're going to be dealing with ourselves while we're single, while we're in dating relationships, and to all you married people, for the rest of your life. You're going to be dealing with yourself and how you're feeling. Breaking bondage, being humble, finding wisdom, these aren't things that just happen one time. There's always another wall that we build, and it seems like we just completely build walls around ourselves all the time, Hopefully we can know this and understand that God has much bigger plans than the walls and the bondages that we build. To all of you, if you came from an abusive relationship when you were a child, He was there with you when that was happening. If you came from a family of divorce, He was there when that happened. And while I was in that room, whatever, on that computer, He was there with me the whole time. And He's always there. And He's always asking me to be patient and wait on Him. And all I do, and even in relationships especially. And so I do. I pray that we can all humble ourselves, seek His wisdom, and start to see others through His eyes, because that's what it's all about. That's what it's about when you decide to make that choice to be in that relationship, is are you willing to see that person through God's eyes and absolutely fall in love, in my case with that woman, through the eyes of God? Are you willing to love her like He loves her, and to put her first in all I do for the rest of my life? And every decision I make, am I going to be willing to say, God, how is this going to affect her before I think of myself? And shouldn't that be our goal, to fall in love with someone through His eyes, through His timing, and His agenda? my desire is to see that person fall more and more in love with Him every day, and I think that should be my desire as I head down this path. And I want to pray for you guys, but I don't know that can actually happen until we fully decide that we're going to start getting rid of ourselves, which was kind of the talk we had tonight. And I know Paul's going to continue on in this a lot more, but I really think to get rid of ourselves in relationships especially, we have to start long before we're actually in a relationship. Because just because you decide now I want to be in a relationship doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden just going to change overnight. So I just want to pray. God, I thank you for this night, and I thank you for everyone here. And I pray you'd be with us all tonight, be with us, all of us who are single, all those of us who are in relationships, and all those of us who are married, and all those of us who have been through the pain of being in relationships that didn't work out, or being through divorce, or all those things. And I just know that you're here with us tonight. And I pray that we would just strive to seek you in everything we do, and that we would strive to see those in our lives come before ourselves, and that we would just seek to fall in love with them through your eyes and not our own, and that we would get rid of ourselves and just take more and more of you. In your name we pray, amen.